and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Nawreen. In today's bulletin, we will present top and trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Biden drawing contrast to Republicans on lower drug costs. Chinese businessman arrested in 1 billion fraud conspiracy. Trump allies file ethics complaint against Governor DeSantis. EPA neighbor rule cuts down wind pollution by power plants. Wisconsin Republicans propose abortion ban exceptions. Texas announces takeover of Houston schools, stirring anger. Three killed, two hurt in Rock Creek Parkway crash after driver flees traffic stop. Northeast digs out from winter storm, faces power outages. Another atmospheric river pounds California, 27K to evacuate. Former Australian PM says subs worst deal in all history. After clashes, Pakistani police pause siege at ex-PM's home. Putin hosts Assad, expected to focus on rebuilding Syria. Brazil is reintroducing visa requirements for US tourists and others. UK Treasury Chief predicts no recession in Britain this year. Floods kill 14 in Turkish earthquake-battered provinces. Award-winning South African jazz singer Gloria Bosman dies. And Cuba beats Australia, reaches first WBC semi-final since 2006. You were listening to headlines, now news in detail. President Joe Biden will highlight the stark differences in how Democrats are tackling skyrocketing drug prices compared to their Republican counterparts as he gears up for an expected re-election announcement. In a speech on Wednesday in Las Vegas that could serve as a preview of the campaign ahead, Biden planned to put the issue of lowering drug costs at the center of his policy and political agenda. The White House thinks it has a winning message in showcasing legislation passed last year that is expected to save taxpayers billions of dollars and lower the cost of drugs for the roughly 84 million Americans who rely on Medicare. This kind of savings will give people a little bit more breathing room, more comfort as they decide to go to the grocery store to buy their food, more ability to pay their rent, or maybe it's just to do something decent for their families, Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra told reporters on Tuesday as he previewed the Democratic president's remarks. Biden plans to talk up how his administration is rolling out several parts of that law passed in a Democratic-controlled Congress last year that cap the price of insulin, make most vaccines free, and allow the federal government to negotiate deals on a handful of pharmaceutical drugs for Medicare enrollees. A business tycoon long sought by the government of China and known for cultivating ties to Trump administration figures including Steve Bannon was arrested Wednesday in New York on charges that he oversaw a $1 billion fraud conspiracy. Guo Wengui, who is 54 years old, and his financier King Ming Jae faced an indictment in federal court in Manhattan charging them with various crimes, including war, securities, and bank fraud. Gu was charged in court papers under the name Ho Wan Kok. U.S. prosecutors said the indictment stemmed from a complex scheme in which Gu lied to hundreds of thousands of online followers in the United States and around the world before misappropriating hundreds of millions of dollars. King Ming Jae, who is 55 years old, has not been arrested. Go was expected to appear in court Wednesday. His attorney did not immediately comment. The top federal prosecutor in Manhattan, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, said in a release that Go was charged with lining his pockets with the money he stole, including buying himself and his close relatives a 50,000 square foot mansion, a 3.5 million Ferrari, and even two 36,000 mattresses, and financing a 37 million luxury yacht. Gu was once believed to be among the richest people in China. He left in 2014 during an anti-corruption crackdown led by President Xi Jinping that ensnared people close to Gu, including a top intelligence official. Chinese authorities have accused Gu of rape, kidnapping, bribery, and other offenses. Allies of former President Donald Trump have filed a complaint with the Florida Commission on Ethics, accusing Governor Ron DeSantis, a leading potential 2024 primary rival, of violating campaign finance and ethics rules with a shadow run for the White House. DeSantis' office called it a frivolous and politically motivated charge. The 15-page complaint filed Wednesday by MAGA Incorporation, a Trump-supporting super political action committee, asks the commission to investigate Florida's Republican leader for allegedly leveraging his elected office and breaching his associated duties in a coordinated effort to develop his national profile, enrich himself and his political allies, and influence the national electorate. The complaint says DeSantis is already a de facto candidate for President of the United States, citing the governor's meetings with donors, outreach by allies to potential staff, and his courting of influential Republicans in early voting states, among other efforts. The complaint asked the commission to punish DeSantis by having him removed from office, publicly censored, or fined. DeSantis' communications director Taryn Frensko, in a statement, dismissed the complaint, adding these to the list of frivolous and politically motivated attacks. It's inappropriate to use state ethics complaints for partisan purposes, she said. A new Good Neighbor rule issued by the Environmental Protection Agency will restrict smokestack emissions from power plants and other industrial sources that burden downwind areas with smog causing pollution they can't control. Nearly 24 states will have to cut harmful industrial emissions of nitrogen oxide and other pollutants to improve air quality for millions of people living in downwind communities. The final rule, issued Wednesday, will save thousands of lives, keep tens of thousands of people out of the hospital, prevent millions of asthma attacks, and reduce sick deaths, according to the agency. Every community deserves fresh air to breathe. We know air pollution doesn't stop at the state line, said EPA Administrator Michael Regan. The rule will take effect in May for power plants and lock in significant pollution reductions to ensure cleaner air and deliver public health protections for those who have suffered far too long from air quality related impacts and illness. Reagan said the limits on industrial sites take effect in 2026. Republicans who control the Wisconsin legislature unveiled a bill Wednesday that would create rape and incest exceptions to the state's 1849 abortion ban and clarify when abortions that protect the health of the mother would be allowed, but would not return the same rights that were in place under Roe v. Wade. The move comes as a pending lawsuit supported by Democratic Governor Tony Evers seeks to overturn the ban entirely. Evers soundly rejected the Republican proposal, saying, "I won't sign a bill that leaves Wisconsin women with fewer rights and freedoms than they had before the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe." Republicans and their anti-abortion allies, who suffered a series of defeats in ballot questions in states across the political spectrum last year, are tackling the issue nationwide in a variety of ways, including seeking exemptions. Republican Assembly Speaker Robin Vos told in an interview Tuesday that he hoped Democrats and Evers would be open to clarifying the health of the mother exception and creating rape and incest exceptions for up to 12 weeks into a pregnancy. Evers said during his successful re-election campaign last year that he would veto any bill that does not do away with the ban entirely and return the law as it was before Roe v. Wade was overturned. Before then, Wisconsin law allowed for abortions for any reason at 20 or more weeks post-fertilization or 22 weeks after the last menstrual cycle. Texas officials on Wednesday announced a state takeover of Houston's nearly 200,000 student public school district, the eighth largest in the country, acting on years of threats and angering Democrats who assailed the move as political. The announcement, made by Republican Governor Greg Abbott's Education Commissioner Mike Morath, amounts to one of the largest school takeovers ever in the U.S. It also deepens a high-stakes rift between Texas' largest city, where Democrats wield control locally and state Republican leaders have sought increasing authority following election fumbles and COVID-19 restrictions. In a letter to the Houston Independent School District, Morath said the Texas Education Agency will replace Superintendent Millard House and the district's elected board of trustees with an appointed board of managers made of residents from within the district's boundaries. Morath said the board has failed to improve student outcomes while conducting chaotic board meetings marred by infighting and violating Open Meetings Act and procurement laws. He accused the district of failing to provide proper special education services and of violating state and federal laws with its approach to supporting students with disabilities. 3 people are dead and 2 people are injured after a crash early Wednesday on Rock Creek and Potomac Parkway in Washington, D.C., involving a car that fled a traffic stop, police said. Rock Creek Parkway is shut down between K and P Streets Northwest. Northbound is diverted to Virginia Avenue. Southbound traffic is diverted to Shoreham Hill toward Culver Street. The entrance at Massachusetts Avenue is closed, officials said. Before the fatal collision, U.S. Park Police said one of the cars was stopped on Rock Creek Parkway south of Virginia Avenue. The driver fled. The officer didn't pursue them and cleared the traffic stop, police said. About 1:40 a.m., police said officers responded to a devastating 2-car crash on Rock Creek Parkway just south of the P Street exit. 3 people in one car were pronounced dead at the scene, and 2 people in another car were injured. One has life-threatening injuries, police said. Their names and ages have not been released. Police didn't say which car fled the traffic stop. Parts of New England and New York were digging out of a nor'easter Wednesday that caused tens of thousands of power outages, numerous school cancellations, and whiteout conditions on the roads. The storm began Monday night and lasted throughout Tuesday, dumping as much as 3 feet of snow and gusty winds. Others got just a few inches or a wintry mix. More high winds and below normal temperatures were in Wednesday's forecast before a warm-up later in the week. The storm is still centered off the New England coast, and there is still some snow showers wrapping around the backside of the system that is impacting portions of New England, National Weather Service meteorologist Frank Pereira said. He added the system is expected to gradually work its way off to the east. Some of the highest snow totals reported were 35 inches in Peterborough, New Hampshire, and in Ashby, Massachusetts, about 15 miles away, the National Weather Service said. At least 2 feet of snow fell in parts of northern New York and the Catskill Mountains, with Indian Lake in New York's Adirondack Mountains recording 31 inches. The latest powerful atmospheric river to drench California put nearly 27,000 people under evacuation orders Tuesday due to flooding and landslide risks. On the Central Coast, workers hauled truckloads of rocks to plug a broken river levee amid steady rain and wind. Damaging winds with gusts topping 70 mph blew out windows, and there were numerous reports of falling trees. Power outages hit more than 330,000 utility customers in northern and central areas, according to poweroutage.us, which tracks outage nationwide. Crews raced to stabilize the Pajaro River's ruptured levee Tuesday, placing rocks and boulders to finish filling the gap that opened late Friday, about 70 miles south of San Francisco. Workers will then raise that portion's elevation to match the rest of the levee over the next few weeks to make it impermeable, officials said. Tuesday's storm initially spread light to moderate rain over the state's north and center, but the National Weather Service said the storm was moving faster than expected and that most of the precipitation would shift southward. Now it's time for global updates. Former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating on Wednesday launched a blistering attack on his nation's plan to buy nuclear-powered submarines from the United States to modernize its fleet, saying it must be the worst deal in all history. Speaking at a National Press Club event, Keating said the submarines wouldn't serve a useful military purpose. The condemnation came as China intensified complaints that the sub-deal threatens global accords against nuclear non-proliferation, and as the head of the International Nuclear Watchdog Organization was in Washington to consult with the White House on the deal. The only way the Chinese could threaten Australia or attack it is on land. That is, they bring an armada of troop ships with a massive army to occupy us, Keating said. This is not possible for the Chinese to do. He added that Australia would sink any such Chinese armada with planes and missiles. After clashing with supporters of former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan outside his home for a second day Wednesday, police paused their efforts to arrest the ousted premier for failing to appear in court last week on graft charges. Police had besieged the 70-year-old opposition leader's house in the eastern city of Lahore since Tuesday as his supporters hurled rocks and bricks and swung batons snatched from officers. Police fired tear gas and clashes went on into the afternoon Wednesday before subsiding. Violence was also reported between Khan's supporters and police in other major cities, including Karachi, Islamabad, the garrison city of Rawalpindi, Peshawar, Quetta, and elsewhere in Pakistan. The government sent additional police to Lahore's upscale area of Zaman Park, where Khan lives. Earlier Wednesday, Khan had emerged from his house to meet with supporters who had faced tear gas and police batons through the night to defend him from arrest. He said he was ready to travel to Islamabad on March 18 under the arrest warrant, but that police did not accept the offer. Khan later posed for cameras seated at a long table, showing off piles of spent tear gas shells he said had been collected from around his home. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday hosted Syrian leader Bashar Assad in the Kremlin for talks expected to focus on rebuilding Syria after a devastating civil war and mending Damascus ties with Turkey, welcoming Assad at the start of the meeting that comes on the anniversary of Syria's 12-year uprising turned civil war. Putin emphasized the Russian military's decisive contribution to stabilizing the country. Russia has waged a military campaign in Syria since September 2015, teaming up with Iran to allow Assad's government to fight back armed opposition groups and reclaim control over most of the country. While Russia has concentrated the bulk of its military resources in Ukraine, Moscow has maintained its military foothold in Syria and kept warplanes and troops at its bases there. Assad thanked Putin for backing Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, noting that the Kremlin's support has remained strong despite the fighting in Ukraine. Brazil is reintroducing the requirement to obtain tourist visas for citizens of the US, Australia, Canada, and Japan starting October 1, the Foreign Ministry said. Former President Jair Bolsonaro had scrapped the visa requirements in 2019 to bolster the country's tourism industry, but the four countries continue to demand visas from Brazilians. The decision to grant the visa exemptions had represented a break with the pattern of Brazilian migration policy, historically based on the principles of reciprocity and equal treatment, the Foreign Ministry said in a statement released quietly late Monday. Brazil does not grant unilateral exemption from visiting visas without reciprocity to other countries, the ministry said, while noting that the government is ready to negotiate visa waiver agreements on a reciprocal basis. Bolsonaro criticized the decision last week after the news outlet G1 first reported the upcoming change, another revocation by Lula. Less jobs and less stimulus of the hotel sector, he said on Twitter. The UK is likely to avoid a recession this year, Treasury Chief Jeremy Hunt said Wednesday, adding a bit of surprise to what had been billed as a boring budget meant to restore confidence and stability in the nation's finances. The announcement came as Hunt delivered his spending plan to a packed House of Commons, drawing repeated cheers from his party's lawmakers and sustained heckling from the opposition amid the political theater that traditionally accompanies publication of the government's budget. An improving global economic picture combined with government plans to stimulate growth mean the British economy won't slip into a technical recession this year, defined as 2 consecutive quarters of contraction, Hunt said, citing analysis from the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility. As recently as November, the OBR forecast that the economy would shrink throughout 2023. The improved outlook gave Hunt enough financial headroom to offer more than £9 billion of tax incentives for businesses that invest in the economy, as well as programs intended to lure mothers and older people back into work. But there was no money for striking teachers, civil servants, and young doctors who staged a noisy protest outside Parliament while Hunt delivered his speech. The strikes are similar to widespread unrest in France about the economic situation and plans to increase the retirement age. Floods caused by torrential rains hit 2 Turkish provinces that were devastated by last month's catastrophic earthquake, killing at least 14 people and increasing the misery for thousands who were left homeless, officials said Wednesday. Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu said rescue teams were still searching for 5 people reported missing in 3 locations after the flash floods turned streets in Adıyaman and Şanlıurfa provinces into rivers, swept away cars, inundated homes, and drenched campsites sheltering earthquake survivors. At least 12 people were killed in Şanlıurfa, including 5 Syrian nationals whose bodies were found inside a flooded basement apartment, and 2 other people who died inside a van that was trapped at an underpass. In Adıyaman, 2 people drowned after surging waters swept away a container home sheltering a family of earthquake survivors. Smooth-voiced South African jazz musician Gloria Bosman has been lauded for her contribution to the country's music industry in a career spanning more than 2 decades. Bosman died on Tuesday following a short illness, her family announced. After a short illness, she transcended peacefully at her home, surrounded by family. The family said in a statement, Gloria had devoted her life not just to her family but to her music. She was loved and adored by many here in South Africa and beyond its borders. The Sweetie-born Bosman was praised for her soothing, silky vocals and versatility in crossing over to various music genres. South Africa's ruling African National Congress Party paid tribute to Bosman, saying the country's music industry will be poorer without her. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 14,662.55. The NYSE Composite is decreased by 282.19 points or 1.89%. Tokyo stock close price is 27,229.48. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 7.44 points or 0.03%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,263.3148. The Shanghai Composite Index is increased by 18 points or 0.55. Hong Kong stock close price is 19,539.87. The Hang Seng Index is increased by 291.91 points or 1.52%. Bombay stock close price is 57,555.90. The Sensex index is decreased by 344.29 points or 0.59%. Let's have a look on today's sports story. Cuba earned a 7,500-mile flight to Miami for a trip to the World Baseball Classic semifinals for the first time since 2006. Cuban baseball fans are so emotional right now. They have been waiting for a long time at the moment, manager Armando Johnson said after a 4-3 win over Australia on Wednesday night. This is the new page, new chapter. Alfredo Despain hit a tie-breaking sacrifice fly and Yulkis Gibbard followed with a 2-run single in 3-run fifth inning. Using current major leaguers for the first time at the WBC, Cuba plays on Sunday in Marlins Park against the winner of a quarterfinal between Venezuela and the second-place team from Group C, Canada, Colombia, Mexico, or the US. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest update. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia, available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jago TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.